In this video, we're gonna be talking about wet sanding, scratch removal, and the rotary buffer. Now let's get straight into it. What's going on? So glad you guys are here and welcome back to the Wilson Auto Detailing community. If you're a professional auto detailer who wants to become more successful and profitable in your business, or just a car enthusiast who wants to improve your detailing ability, then definitely consider hitting that big red subscribe button right below this video. So just to give you guys some context about this situation is I had a customer call me who actually had the side of their small SUV keyed, and so there are some pretty serious but kind of finer scratches on this car that I'm gonna be showing you guys how I remove. So let's take a look at them. Here is one scratch right here. Here is where it more or less got keyed. So let's see if I can get the light correctly where you guys can see some scratches right there all up and down. A bunch of them, like 4, 5, 6, 7 scratches right there. And then of course we have the passenger door right here, and we have the key right there. And then we have another scratch right there. So hopefully in the camera you guys can see it at least pretty well. Now in order to be attacking these scratches, I've got my DA polisher, I've got my rotary polisher, I've got several different polishes, I've got tape, I've got all that sort of stuff. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is tape off all of this and then kind of explain to you guys how I have prepared it before I actually get into wet sanding. The reason I'm taping this off, for those of you who don't know, is because when you're using a rotary buffer, well, number one, you don't want polish to get in all of these cracks and the creases of the door, because then you just have to go and clean it up afterwards. But number two, when you have character lines like this, and when I say character lines, what I mean is any place where the paint kind of veers up or kind of like gives some sort of body line appearance that makes it look kind of cool or whatever, you want to tape these off, because any point that you have a character line that's raised, because the rotary buffer spins on a single axis, the friction and the heat is going to increase at a pretty dramatic level at any sort of character line. So since I'm doing a scratch right here, I want to make sure that the close character line, the close body line is taped off so that the friction and the heat is not going to burn this edge. So would I burn this edge without this tape? Well, no, because I have a lot of experience, but it's just, once again, it's just a risk management sort of thing. So what is next? Well, number one, let me explain how I prepared the paint. First, I took my 50-50 solution, my 1-to-1 ratio of isopropyl alcohol and distilled water, and I cleaned the whole surface. Then I clayed the whole surface, and then I did a second pass of the IPA wash. Why do you do the alcohol preparation? Well, that's because any sort of wax or cleaner or sealant or anything that's on the paint can be stripped off with that 1-to-1 dilution of distilled water and alcohol. So before I go to actually polish away any sort of scratches and actually remove a layer of the clear coat, I want to make sure that there's nothing on the paint except the clear coat, so that I can get as much of my polish and out of my wet sanding and out of my polishing as is possible. So let's go ahead and move to wet sanding, and I'm going to show you guys how I do this. Well, for those of you who are new to the business or new to detailing, you might not know what the term wet sanding is, so this is not a comprehensive video of wet sanding, but the quick version is wet sanding is simply using sandpaper, wetting it with some type of liquid, some type of lubrication, and having some sort of constant flow of water as you're sanding away on the paint. And the reason that you have to wet sand is because as the clear coat gets sanded away, if you don't have some sort of constant flow of water to wash the sanded clear coat away, then the clear coat will actually start to bunch up and clot up your sandpaper, and it'll hinder the scratch removal and hinder the sanding process. So that's why they call it wet sand. So what I have is my solution of Optimum No Rinse solution, and I use that just because I like Optimum No Rinse, I like the lubrication it gives, and it's good for wet sanding. Now what I've got here is called a sanding block. Now this doesn't actually have any sandpaper on it. This is a sanding block that I reuse and I reuse, and this is 2000 grit sandpaper, okay? So all I do is wrap this 2000 grit around this block, and then I can use it as a sanding block. What's the point of using a sanding block? A lot of people argue that a sanding block is better than just using your hands, because if I just take this sandpaper to the paint and use my hands, which I do sometimes, but they argue that because your fingers, they don't cover the amount of surface area that a block covers, you're putting pressure at different points instead of having even pressure that you could have with a block. So that's why they argue that a sanding block might be better. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit these scratches right here, which are the marks where the car got keyed. It doesn't look to me like these scratches are extremely deep. Once again, you can do the fingernail test, which is basically running your fingernail across the gradient of the scratch, and if it dips in or if it catches, then you you definitely know the scratch is below the clear coat. Once again, I'm gonna start with my Optimum No Rinse solution just like this, my wet sanding block, and I'm going to sand across the gradient of the scratch. So since the scratches go this way, I'm gonna sand this way. And of course, I'm gonna wear my readers so that I can see it up close and personal. Now what I want to go ahead and do now is switch to the 2000 grit sandpaper. Why am I switching to the 2000 grit? Well, because as far as I can see up close and personal, all of these scratches are basically taken care of as far as the clear coat is brought down to a level that is pretty significant to remove these scratches. So now I'm gonna go ahead and actually cause these sanding marks to be even more fine with the 2000 grit, and then after that I can follow up with my rotary buffer and polish out those sanding marks. Here it goes with the 2000 grit. Now let me bring you guys in up close and personal so you can see what's going on. You guys can see the clouding effect. I hope it picks it up in the camera. The clouding effect that has happened here. So it looks, if you guys are beginning in the detailing world and you're doing paint correction like this may scare you because it looks like it looks like you jacked it up. That's what happens when clear coat is removed. So that is actually a good thing because that's what I want to happen. Now, if you guys can tell in the camera, through the cloudiness, you can see some of these scratches are still here. So right there, right there, right there. So now that it's dry, what I do is I go back on the areas where I see, oh, the scratch is not quite gone all the way, until I see that the scratch is gone all the way. Now, the only other thing about this is that if I keep sanding and keep sanding and keep sanding, and the scratch just doesn't disappear, then there's only a certain amount of level of wet sanding that I can do before I actually remove the clear coat and I do permanent damage. So sometimes scratches cannot be 100% removed in this way, and that's something that I always communicate with my customers beforehand, because once again, scratch removal is a very case-by-case, situation-by-situation part of detailing. So once again, I'm going to go over these parts and then bring you guys back in before I start polishing. Okay, so now here is where I'm at. I have sanded off a fairly significant amount of the clear coat. Now, nothing like crazy, but it's just approaching the point where I even get uncomfortable, even though I've been doing this for years. And so can I still see little glares of the scratches? Yes. Now, I can't see them from this angle, but I can see them from this angle. So with my naked eye, it's become very difficult to see them, coupled with the fact that I have sanded off a fairly significant amount. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is reach for my buffer, and I am going to be using some specific polishes and a wool pad to actually sand away these marks, and let me explain how I do that. So I'm going to be using a polish from Shocar. Now, I don't always use Shocar polishes. I use, Minzerna, I use Atom polishes, but again, I like to experiment with different polishes just to see how they react with different paint. So I'm going to use a little bit of Shocar's Power Bright polish and my DeWalt rotary pad with a wool pad. Why am I using this? Because this will take care of, even sometimes 1500 grit sand marks, but especially the 2000 grit. This will take care of it. Now, I've got it on about 1200 RPMs right now. I'm gonna keep it anywhere between 1000 and like 1600 for a job like this, because the slower I go, the better that polish is gonna be able to bite into that paint and remove those sanding marks. And if I go really fast, I'm gonna end up heating up the paint before I even allow the polish to do its thing. And so you almost risk closing in or capsulating those scratches and not being really able to get them out to the highest capacity. So I'm gonna keep it anywhere between 1000 and 1600, just depending on where I'm at as I keep doing this. So this is how it looks. I just want you guys to be able to see the amount of polish I'm using. I'm not using a ton. I just have tiny little streaks across from the inner circle to the outer circle. It doesn't take a lot of polish to accomplish something like this. Now, because I know you guys are gonna ask the question, how much pressure am I putting? I'm not putting a lot of pressure. I am letting the tool do the work, the weight of the tool do the work. So not a lot of pressure, I would say just light pressure. So this is after the more aggressive polish with the DeWalt rotary polisher, and it looks absolutely outstanding. I actually cannot see the scratch from any angle. The only thing I see right here is a tiny tiny, maybe like half an inch worth of a scratch that's so almost negligible, there's no way anybody's gonna be able to see it. And the whole point of actually this scratch removal is only to get rid of these before this lease gets turned in. And so the only thing we really have to do is improve it to the point of complete camouflage anyway. So all of these scratches were totally removed. This tiny thing is the only thing that's left. And sometimes you'll find that that happens because every scratch is created differently. And so some parts of the scratches are so deep, and then, you know, maybe the ends are more shallow. So the ends of the scratch come out completely, whereas the depth in the middle of the scratch doesn't come out completely. But once again, you guys can see this paint is looking seriously good. Once again, for those of you who are in the detailing world who are beginning, those wet sanding marks are totally removed. So though it was a little scary at first, totally gone now. And the reason why I love the rotary polisher with the wool pad is because it happens so quickly. It saves so much time, it's ridiculous. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna repeat the process that I just did on these other scratches. So on this panel and on that panel, and I'm gonna finish polishing this right here, and then there's one more scratch on the other side. I'm gonna wet sand with the 1000, I'm gonna wet sand with the 2000, follow up with my wool pad, my Shokar polish, and my rotary polisher. And then after that, I'm gonna come back around all of these scratches with my DA, and I'm gonna use a foam interface pad with a microfiber front, and I'm gonna use a high gloss finishing polish just to completely restore the shine, and I'll bring you guys in for the finished look. Now, real fast, for those of you who are wondering, yes, you're supposed to throw the cord over your shoulder, but in some cases it's just so quick and you've been doing it so long that, you know, you might not have to do that. But for safety reasons, so the cord doesn't get caught up in the buffer itself, yes, it's a good idea to throw it over your shoulder. Alright guys, so now I'm finished with wet sanding, I'm finished with my rotary polisher, so now all the sanding marks are gone, all the scratches are gone, but basically the last step is my Griot's Garage DA polisher. Once again, I've got an inch interface foam with a soft microfiber face to it. This is a 6.5 inch pad, and I'm gonna be using the step 2 basically of the Shokar polish, which is the Renew It, and it's gonna bring back the high gloss, high shine look, and that's really the only point of this step. And then I'm simply gonna wax those areas, pull off the tape, and be done. You guys can see I'm applying it with my hand just because I don't need to use a lot on this step, and so I'm really just dabbing a little bit, and because I'm gonna kind of hit it all in one pass without stopping, I'm just gonna go ahead and put polish on all these areas that I got done with my rotary. So I'm gonna keep this at a little bit higher speed because I am looking for like a high gloss. I'm gonna start a little bit lower, but I'm definitely gonna finish with it on next to the highest setting and just kind of quickly pass over it on that highest setting after I work it in for just a little bit on about 3 or 4. Now, the very last step for me in this case is going to be applying Meguiar's Synthetic Express Spray Wax. Normally, I would put a sealant or like Meguiar's Ultimate Paste Wax over this, but because this is a lease and this is not going to be continually driven by my customer, I'm just gonna go ahead and make it easy on myself and make it easy on them so that they don't have to pay anything more, and it's a win-win. That way it's quick, it's still a protective layer, and she's gonna go ahead and turn in this car and these scratches are gonna be removed. So now finally I will bring you guys in for the finished look, and we'll start right here. Once again, there used to be a big scratch right here and it is no longer there, and I'll give you guys different angles so you can see there is 0 scratch whatsoever there. Then of course we moved down here underneath the front passenger door handle, and there were 2 scratches down here that went all the way down this body line about right there, and once again you see absolutely nothing. I'll give you guys a little bit different angle so you can see that as well. 0 scratching. Now I will show you guys the key marks right here. So this is where the car was keyed, and you guys can see no key streaks or scratches or transfer or anything left behind. The only tiny thing I see is right here, and once again, it's one of those things where it gets so deep in the clear coat that it gets past my comfortability point of continuing to sand. But the alternative, rather than removing it 100%, you guys can't see it in the camera, I can't see it in the camera, I can't even see it in real life. The only reason I can see it is because I know that it's right there, and so I'm staring at it with glasses on and things like that. But here is the large view. Of course, this car is not detailed, just right there, right there, right there, and right there are polished and waxed. So you guys can see wet sanding to rotary buffer to dual action polisher to wax. That's my sequence of doing things. That's a quick overview of my sequence, a quick overview of how I wet sand, polish with a rotary buffer, and finish with a DA. But guys, stay tuned for more videos because I'm going to definitely come out with a playlist of rotary polishing, how to, wet sanding, how to, and all that sort of thing. So if you guys like this video and it added some value to your life, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, hook up all that stuff in the YouTube comments below because I always read those and I'm sure to get back to you guys as fast as I can. And like in most of my videos, if you guys are interested in buying anything I used in this video, then definitely use the Amazon links in the description box below this video, because if you go through my links to purchase anything off Amazon, it gives this channel a very small commission, but it helps this channel stay alive so I can continue to give out awesome content just like this all the time. So if you want the rotary polisher, the DA, the polishes I use, some suggested polishes I use, the wax, whatever, there will be Amazon links to all of that in the description box below. And if you're new here, then definitely consider subscribing because I come out with videos all the time just like this on products, tools, strategies, communication skills, business skills, and so much more, all in an effort to help the pro detailers become more successful and profitable in your businesses. And I share the same strategies that took my detailing business into a full-time income with only part-time hours. So if that interests you, definitely subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always from Luke here at Wilson Auto Detailing, keep working hard, and I'll see you guys in the next video.